Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, monimuli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Ghana, Himalaya, Good Pods, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Max Brooks, New York Times best-selling author, here to celebrate his official Minecraft novel called The Village. Before we invite Max into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by the Reading with Your Kids certified great read, Lucas and the Game of Chance, written by Anthony L. Manna. Are you looking for a thrilling book to read with your tweens and teens? Look no further than Lucas and the Game of Chance. While Lucas is playing his flute at the seawall one day, he befriends a mysterious talking, dancing snake that rewards him with fortune and favor. Some years later, tempted by greed and pride, Lucas loses all his riches and his family. He must now set off on a treacherous journey through a frightening forest filled with suspense and strange creatures to find Destiny, her son Ilion the sun, and her daughter Luna the moon. These celestial gardens will surely allow him to reverse his misfortune, restore his honor, and win back all that he loves and treasures. Won't they? A reimagined Greek folktale, Lucas and the Game of Chance, is illuminated with dramatic and evocative pen and ink drawings that provide an ideal backdrop for the dark intrigue that fills this haunting story of human struggle, courage, and resilience. You and your kids are going to love it. Get your copy today. Lucas and the Game of Chance by Anthony L. Manna. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by the books written by Yobi Q. Yobi Q is absolutely one of my favorite guests here on the podcast. Through her visits to the podcast, I've learned that Yogi began her career as a preschool teacher during her junior year in college. As an educator, she taught kids and their families to embrace love and diverse cultures. Since leaving the classroom, she's dedicated herself to writing children's books featuring Asian characters and cultures, helping kids like her wonderful daughter feel seen, heard, and represented. You're going to love the books by Yobi Q. Books like I Am an Amazing Asian Girl, I Am a Bold Asian Boy, and of course her debut children's book, Our Lunar New Year, celebrating Lunar New Year in Asian communities. Yobi has even created her own board game called Guess the Asian Food. You're going to love Yobi. And this week, she launched her own podcast. It's called Rise and Shine with Yobi Q. You know, there's so much going on in Yobi's creative world. You have to check it out for yourself. Please visit her website, byobeq.com. That's BYOBEQIU.com to discover all of Yobi's wonderfulness. Join us right now from Los Angeles and the great state of California. Our guest is here today to celebrate his brand new book. It's based on the Minecraft game. It's called Minecraft The Village. Please welcome to the show New York Times best-selling author Max Brooks. Max, how are you?
I'm okay. Thank you for having me on.
I'm really glad that you're on. Thanks for being up so early to be on the podcast out there on the West Coast. Really appreciate that.
Well, you know, I had to get my my senior son up for high school anyway and make breakfast and see him off. So I'm up.
There you go. There you go. Max and I were just talking about college, and it really is a challenging time for parents these days. You know, we're hearing all this talk about relieving student debt, and that's a great thing. Kids are suffering from incredible amounts of debt, but I'm not hearing anything about what can we do to prevent kids from ending up in that debt in the first place.
You know, as a parent, I'm always trying to do my primary job, which is to give him the skills to take care of himself. Once I'm out of the picture, my wife's out of the picture. And, the problem is with school, the schools that you and I went to, the schools that are still teaching the way they teach, is it's based on the Prussian model of education, which is the Industrial Revolution, standardization and memorization, regurgitation, ticking clock. And that worked really well up until about 20 years ago. It doesn't work anymore because our kids are going to have to change jobs numerous times. They're going to have to change whole careers. They're going to have to be flexible, problem solvers, innovative thinkers. They're going to have to go back to being the pushcart salesman that our great-grandparents were. And we need to find ways to train their brains to be creative, innovative, resilient problem solvers. And there's a video game that 130 million people play every day that can teach them that.
I didn't even know I was setting you up for that. But I'm really happy that I did. So I'm not a video game player, but we've had a couple of authors on who've created books based on the game. Talk a little bit more about Minecraft, and it really does sound like something that the players are in complete control of.
Yes, most video games out today, even though they've come out in the 21st century, are still 20th century games in that they are very rigid and there's only one right way to solve a problem. And the trick is to reach that right way as quickly and efficiently as possible. And that's lovely because that's how the Prussian model of education system set us up to do it. We didn't realize it until maybe last week, but that system has set us up to be replaced by AI. Minecraft, ironically, a video game, teaches us how to be creative individuals. So you're in this world of simple block shapes, and there is no right and wrong way to solve the problems. You can do it your way. So let's say you're given a challenge. Don't starve. Pretty simple. But you can farm, you can fish, you can forage, you can hunt, and you can do it however you want to do it. As long as you got food in your stomach and you don't die of starvation, who cares how you get there? Which is exactly how the 21st century workplace is. So it's that kind of brain training you learn from Minecraft.
You're right on all those levels. I mean, our kids are facing a completely different world. The idea of, and I'm much older than you, but when I was getting out of college, the thought was, oh, you get a job and you stay there for 40 years
Right.
and retire with the pension. That never sounded attractive to me at all. So I just resisted that with every part of my body. But kids, that doesn't even exist for the most part for anyone.
No. I am a Generation X, and our Easy Rider movie, our banner movie, was called Reality Bites. And there's a scene where Ethan Hawke is going on this whiny rant about, what am I supposed to do with my life, man? Get a job like my dad at the factory, worked there for 20 years. No, dude, those jobs are gone. You'd be lucky to get a job like that. So our kids have to learn to go sideways instead of just up and down. And also work in teams and work on projects and be able to say, hey, listen, I know we've never done it this way before, but let's try something, which is exactly what you get comfortable doing in Minecraft.
Yeah. So it's the perfect game for parents who don't want their kids to be wasting their times playing video games, but they know the kids are going to be playing games anyways.
Exactly. If you don't want your kid to grow up being a straight A student with perfect SAT scores who can't find a job, this is the game for you.
I love that. And it's really funny, but it's really sad because there's a lot of kids out there with the straight A's and the perfect education and all the student debt, and they don't have a job or they're working in retail and they can't afford to live.
Right. Whereas a lot of the guys, even my age, I know a lot of Gen Xers who got decapitated when the economy changed. I know a guy went to an Ivy League school, still wears his Ivy League ring, barely can make a living because he learned to do one thing the right way quickly instead of becoming flexible and learning to do a million things his way.
Yeah. You know, one of the things, and we're going to get into the story in the village, the story that we'll find in the village in a minute, but I bounced around a number of different jobs before I made my way onto the stage. And a number of those jobs, I was hired with absolutely no background, no expertise and for the field that I was working into. They just liked me and I was loud and they knew that I could get them some attention. But I was able to solve a number of problems the so-called experts in that field weren't able to solve just because I looked at it from a different perspective. I was like, well, why did you ever try this? And they're like, oh, you can't do that because all the books told us it wouldn't work. And then it turns out it does work.
Exactly. And what I loved about Minecraft when I first watched my son play it was that it also gave you emotional life lessons and deep intellectual thinking if it could be made aware. So, for example, it teaches you to take life in steps. You spawn on this world, you ain't got nothing except the painted clothes on your back. And so you need to punch a tree to get wood, to make a crafting table, to then make tools. And then the tools will help you make better tools and then mine better materials to then make a house. So it teaches you the granular process of how things happen, which we all need to learn as opposed to the industrial model, which is just tighten this bolt in this massive assembly line and tighten it the right way as quick as you can.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So tell us about the village. Tell us about this world that you created.
Well, let's start with the first book. I was asked to write the first official Minecraft novel, and it was called The Island. And it was my character. I call him Jack Black because he read the audiobook. He spawns in this world, doesn't remember who he is, doesn't know anything about this world, swims to an island. He spawns in the ocean, and he starts out like Robinson Crusoe, having to survive on the island and having to learn the rules of this new world. And he learns life lessons about how to live with himself. Patience, planning, take life in steps, how to recover from failure. Wow, is that a big one. And at the very end, his final life lesson is once he's turned this island into a comfort zone, he realizes that growth can't come from a comfort zone. It has to come from leaving it. So he leaves the island, makes himself a boat, paddles away, gets to a continent in book 2, The Mountain, and meets another castaway just like him. And those are friendship lessons. So the two of them have to learn about communication, compromise, working together. And at the end, they continue on their journey to find out maybe how to get home. And in book 3, they come to a village, and it is the natural evolution of these lessons, which is how to be a citizen, how to live in a community. They have to learn about money. What is it? How can it go sideways if you get seduced by it? What is ethical capitalism? They learn about democracy. Why is it important to vote as opposed to putting all your power in the hands of one flawed human being? Then war comes to them, as it unfortunately does with our species. What do you do when you don't want a war, but a war is here? How do you survive? How do you win in order to survive? So all these lessons come together in Minecraft the Village.
That's really intense. And, you know, we love to talk to our listeners about the kind of conversations they can have with their kids while they're enjoying a book, either reading it together or co-reading it. And boy, families reading The Village, there's so much there that they can talk about, not only in relationship to what's going on in the village story, but in the world around us.
Yes, every chapter is a jumping off point for a discussion about the world around us. You know, if you have a chapter where in the village you accidentally punch a villager and then the giant iron golem, who are the police, come and try to mess you up, it's a chance to discuss laws. Why do we have laws? What is justice? What are cops, and what are good cops, and why do we need good cops? Things like that. These are the important lessons in the outside world. But you gotta, obviously, when you're trying to teach kids anything, you gotta come to them. Don't expect them to come to you. Speak to them in a language that they understand, in a way that makes them care. Because if you're just blathering civics to them and they have absolutely no frame of reference, they're going to do what I did in school and zone through it.
Yep. That old expression, in one ear, out the other.
Yeah.
And it sounds, too, like there's a great lesson in The Village about how we can agree to disagree.
Yes. No, that is a big one. We have a huge, big, deep discussion about how to protect the villagers. And my character, Guy, is arguing with his friend Summer, and he's saying, well, I just want to protect the villagers. I want to build a wall around the village. And she says, yes, but you're taking away their freedom. And he's like, yeah, but I want to protect them. I'm doing a good thing. And she's saying, yeah, but you're flawed and you're making yourself the king. And what if you make a mistake and your mistake gets everyone killed and they can't vote? And he's like, what do you mean? How are they going to vote? I can't even understand their language. She says, put doors in the wall. Let them vote with their feet. And if they want to go outside, they can go outside. And if they want to run inside and be safe, they can be safe. That's their vote, and it's their right.
Yeah. I love it. And the other lesson that I love that you're talking about from the first book in your series is how to recover from failure.
Oh, that's a big one. That is a big one.
Huge.
Yeah.
As a parent of a teenager, kind of, how did you help your own kid learn that lesson?
Well, I got very lucky. I didn't realize I was lucky when I was growing up because I had crushing dyslexia. Just horrible, brutal, in the early 1980s where there was just nothing. And thank God I had the best mom ever who went and studied it and educated me and fought every year to educate my teachers. But my life was constant failure and recovery, as opposed to the kids around me who could just master the system of memorization, come in, blow through a test, get an A, bing, bang, boom. And life was pretty easy when they were young. And then they got out into the world and wow, did they struggle. I mean, I look at some guys my age who are really having a rough time. And I always think, you got really good grades in high school, didn't you? As opposed to me, because I had to learn how to recover. You work. Sometimes hard work is not enough. You fail and you go, okay, how do I get back up and work smarter and find a way around a problem instead of just trying to go through it? There's no better lesson, especially now. I have a moment in Minecraft, the first book, where the rules of the game change because he's got it all down. And then suddenly the game changes and he realizes when the world changes, you have to change with it. Because that's the world we're living in now. You know, technological change, cultural change, economic change, that used to happen once in a generation. You know, maybe every 20 years, Archie Bunker would bump up against a new world. That's happening every year. And if you don't learn to recover and learn new skills and be comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're the dodo. You're just going to become extinct.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I just love as I'm talking to you is you have so much passion for this series. You've had lots of success in writing, but it's just the love that you have for the series and the experience you had creating it. It's overwhelming. I love it.
I don't do anything half-assed. I just really don't. And because also I come from the point of view of a reader. You know, I know, and especially an established franchise like Minecraft, you know, I know how it feels now that everything is established franchises. I know how it feels to be a fan of something and watch people just totally half-ass it, and they don't respect me because they don't respect the brand. And so that's why I had to play a whole lot of Minecraft, because when I talk to these kids, they need to trust me. They need to know that I love it as much as them. I know what I'm doing. Don't worry, readers. I'm not going to let you down.
Yeah. So a big part of the quote-unquote research for this project was just getting down and playing the game.
Oh, yeah. I'm not kidding. In the beginning of the book where it says the following is based on true events. Because there are certain levels of unpredictability that can only happen to you when you're in it, when you're playing the game. I have a moment where Jack Black, he's underground, he's being attacked by monsters, and he only has one arrow left, and he shoots his final arrow at the monster as a bat happens to flutter in between them and takes that arrow. Ooh. That can only happen by playing the game. Likewise, in The Village, Sean Astin, because now it's Sean Astin reading in the audiobook, he sees a monster way off, and Summer has a magical bow that can fire flaming arrows. And she's firing into the darkness, and he's like, what? Those arrows aren't going to light up the cave. And then he realizes she's not trying to do that. She's lighting a fire behind the monster, so whenever it passes by and flickers, she knows which direction it's going in. That only happened because it happened to me.
Wow. This is really fascinating. Now, we are all about kids and parents reading together. This sounds like Minecraft. Is it something that parents and kids can play together?
They can 100% play together. You can play two-player. You can play watching your kid play and then just sort of curate it. Like, hey, wow, you just accomplished this goal. What did you think you learned from it? You can have discussions about you can't have discussions with Call of Duty, right? You can't be like, oh, wow, you just shot that guy in the head. What did you learn from that? Because trust me, if there is a lesson, you don't want your kid learning that lesson. But you can learn, oh, listen, it took you a long time to figure out how to make wooden tools, to then make stone tools, to then make iron tools. What do you think you learned from that? And what do you think you can learn about your life outside the game? How can those two connect? So there's endless chances for parents and kids to grow together.
Yeah. Speaking of growing, you were mentioning earlier that your mom was your hero and that she really enabled you to grow despite the fact that you had this challenge in learning. How can, because we have lots of parents who are listening whose kids have various learning challenges, how can those parents best advocate for their kids? What message can they give to their kids to help the kids understand that, hey, you're not thriving in the system, but you know what? This system kind of sucks. It ain't perfect.
Right. And that's where the audiobook came in. When I was tested for dyslexia, it was discovered that I learned best through my ears, not through my eyes. So my mother, God bless her, took all my books to the Braille Institute in Los Angeles and had them read onto audiobooks. So audiobooks became my way around the system. And that's why I put in as much effort into helping produce my audiobooks as I do writing the books themselves. That's why I get top-notch talent like Jack Black and Sean Astin. And so, and I tell my son, that's reading. Listening is reading. Don't you worry about it. And that's what parents have to tell their kids, which is, don't worry if you're not thriving in the system the way it's set up. As long as you get to where you need to get, however you get there, that's the best way to do it. It doesn't mean you're dumb. Doesn't mean you're substandard. It means you're different. Yeah. And that's okay, because guess what? In the real world, being different is your survival skill. Yeah.
Yeah. Being different can really help you succeed once you get out of that school setting.
Right. Because while all the other people your age are saying, no, this is the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be this way, but it's not working. You're going to be the one saying, well, why don't we try it a different way? Right. Like when I was in school and I couldn't read quickly like the other kids, so I listened to an audiobook. And by the way, I still do that. Yeah. You know, in addition to being an author, I'm on 2 national security think tanks. The Atlantic Council's Brent Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security and the Modern War Institute at West Point. And the only way I'm able to get through this copious amount of reading material is to have my iPad read it to me as I have the hard copy next to me and I'm underlining. So what I learned in 6th grade, I'm still doing.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I have my Kindle read to me when I'm reading a book if I don't have the audio version. Of course, as I'm traveling around the country, it's always an audiobook in the radio or a podcast. It's a fantastic way to learn.
Yeah. There is no right way and wrong way to learn. As long as you're learning, you're learning. Yeah. So don't worry about it.
Yeah. So we've learned about your Minecraft novels. We've learned a little bit about what you're doing to help us keep us safe on those think tanks. What else do we want to know about Max Brooks and your latest writings?
Well, we want to know that that pretty much every book I write, be it Minecraft, zombies, Bigfoot, World War One, it seems like an eclectic, I guess, canon, but it's all about the same theme, which is adapting to crisis, which was my whole childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch individuals have to adapt to crisis. I watch now countries having to adapt to crisis. And so innovation and flexibility are so critical. And that's what I always write about. I always write about a character doing their thing, everything's fine, and then suddenly everything changes and they realize who I used to be is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was walking the dog the other day where I do my best writing when I'm walking the dog thinking in my head. And I came across this billboard that said, "You are enough." And I get the theme, and it's a lovely theme, which is, you know, don't beat up on yourself. You're okay. But in some ways, no, you're not. You always need to be more. You always need to grow. You always need to change. And so find your best method of changing. Figure out who you are first, and then figure out how you learn.
Mm-hmm.
And be comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best thing. For example, I became a decent public speaker because I can't read and speak at the same time because of my dyslexia. Can't read from a teleprompter, can't read cue cards, can't read a speech. The first time I tried to read about something JFK in 6th grade, and the whole class laughed at me. So now I either memorize it, mm-hmm. or I just know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So I can get up at SOCOM and talk to a room full of generals about Russian asymmetric warfare tactics and just speak to them and answer their questions because I know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But that was my method. Other people have different methods. So figure out your method.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's really important. And if you can share that message as a parent with your kid, letting them know, hey, you learn differently. That's okay. Let's you and I work together to figure out the best way you learn.
Yes.
And then move forward. And what a gift.
I would say that for parents with kids struggling with learning issues, the biggest problems are what the military calls second and third order effects, which is not the initial problem. It's the problems caused by the problem. So like in warfare, for every soldier that dies from an enemy bullet or a shell, there's going to be problems of infection and disease. That's the second and third order effects of war. Well, with learning issues, the second and third order effects are anxiety mm-hmm. and low self-esteem. Mm-hmm. Those are the big issues. Like when I would sit down for a test, say in 7th grade, it wasn't the dyslexia that was the main problem. It was the years of accumulated anxiety and low self-esteem. Like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm an idiot. That became the bigger problem. So with parents, the real issue has to be you gotta deal with the learning issue first, early as you can, and then work on ways to reduce the stress. My mother did that. My mother was the first parent in Southern California who fought for untimed tests. Because in the Prussian model of education for the Industrial Revolution, time is money. Come on. Do it. Ticking clock. That's why the bells in schools ring, because it simulates the factory floor. Ah. Boom, bell, go. So my mother had to fight and say, listen, this kid needs to be able to take untimed tests. He is not lazy. Mm-hmm. He is not working less. That's the big problem, because as a parent, you gotta not just advocate for your kid to the kid, you gotta fight the system. Right? And you have to, because teachers are always thinking that your kid is looking for a way to opt out. And so you've got to be able to fight and advocate and say, listen, my kid is working damn hard, maybe harder, probably harder than the other kids, but you need to meet him halfway or her halfway and find a reward for that, because if they bang their head against the wall enough, eventually they're going to give up. Mm-hmm. My mother, this is exactly the speech my mother gave to my teachers. And I'm sorry to say, a generation later, I had to give the exact same speech to my kids' teachers. Because he doesn't have dyslexia, but he's got other learning issues. Mm-hmm. So you have to become Clarence Darrow, advocating in the court of education for your kid.
Yeah. Well, we really hope that everybody will take that message to heart, get out there, advocate for your kid, and get a copy of Minecraft The Village by Max Brooks, because I think it will be a lot of fun and a great way to start some really meaningful conversations. Max, where can people go to find out more about The Village and also find out more about all the great things that you're creating?
You can always go to maxbrooksauthor.com. You can find me on X. I guess what used to be Twitter. Mm-hmm. Minecraft The Village is, in the words of my generation, wherever books are sold.
There you go. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Minecraft The Village. Our guest has been Max Brooks. Max, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, buddy. Take care.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Carmen Tafoya. She'll be here to celebrate Warrior Girl. Right now, we want to thank all the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guest, Max Brooks. Please be sure to check out The Village. Also want to thank our sponsors, Anthony L. Manna, his fantastic Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read, Lucas and the Game of Chance is a book that your teens and tweens will love reading together with you. Also want to thank Yobi Q. Please be sure to check out all the fantastic books by Yobi Q at her website, buyyobiq.com. And also please be sure to check out her brand new podcast. It's called Rise and Shine with Yobi Q. It can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and so many other places. I want to thank my incredible team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Anna Larry, Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.